You started bodybuilding at 78, and you now also have your own podcast, and then you also sued America, corporate America, and I was like, so many things are happening in your life.
Yeah, so the critical part probably is I was born in 1940 in Holland, northeastern Holland, actually.
Wow.
And as we all know, that was in the beginning of the Second World War. And the place that I was born in was a province called Groningen.
Yeah.
It's the extreme, visualize Holland, go to the extreme northeast, about 10
Right.
to 15 minutes from the German border.
Oh my
So
God.
we got invaded by the German army in about April of 1940, and with the Blitzkrieg. And
Wow.
Jeez.
my family then, my
Mm.
my mom and dad got married, were in love, got married, and built a strategy around their future and their life. And my dad got a job in the forest industry there, and they had a boy first, and then a girl, and then the whole world changed. He got drafted into the Dutch army, and the last time we heard from him was just before the bombing of Rotterdam that
Jeez.
destroyed the downtown of Rotterdam, and it killed thousands and thousands of people. And so
Oh
for
wow.
5 years they wouldn't know if he was alive or died. And so, and my mother was pregnant with me. I was born November the
Mm.
1st, 1940, and the whole world changed for them, both of them, that would affect them for the rest of their lives. And obviously, we as kids, I still remember from the time I was 3.5, 4 years old, the bombers overhead bombing Germany and the critical infrastructure of Germany supporting the war. And we could see it all the way from our house. In the distance, we saw the northern part of Germany touches on the North Sea link, and we could see the sky would be red and hundreds of bombers in the air. And my mother would take us outside, not to kind of watch the planes, but it was safer to be mentally outside than inside. And then we went through the hunger winter of 1944-45, the coldest winter on record. I still remember that. Even today, I can still feel, and that's now nearly 78 years ago, I can still feel the hunger inside and the cold. We only had a little room in our house that we could heat. Every morning, my brother, my sister, myself, we would go into the railroad yard with gunny bags and pick up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did as kids is because the Germans would kick us in the butt, but they wouldn't shoot us. And then we'd be back the next day. And so all those kind of things still stayed with me. And then we obviously at which is kind of interesting because I believe today it's is it April the 14th, I believe, or
Mm.
so, or
Wow.
and so we were liberated April the 12th, 1945.
Wow.
And
Wow.
by the Canadian Army, and that made such an impression on me that I always knew from
Wow.
that point forward, 5 years old, that I would go. When I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, and I did. And
Canada.
yeah, Canada. And I was going to go when I was 17, but then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, was there for nearly 30 months, and then after that worked in the forest industry in Holland for a couple of years, and then I left for Canada, and I wanted to start with nothing, and just a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I had 150 Canadian dollars when I left Schiphol, Amsterdam, and when I arrived in Montreal, I took the train across Canada. That's a long way, 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
5 nights, and we go slow compared to
That
Europe.
is.
Anyway, so I arrived in Vancouver. Went to the immigration office. I couldn't speak the English. I didn't know a soul. Didn't have a job. Fortunately, there was a German fellow there. I could speak some German. I told him what I wanted to do. I want to build a lumber mill. And he said, go to Prince George. That's where I am today, the center of British Columbia, about 800 kilometers or 500 miles north of Vancouver. And when I came off the bus here, I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes. And I counted my money at least 3 times, and I had exactly
Wow.
$25.47. and but what I had lots of is attitude. I'm always positive, no matter what happens, how bad it is. I know tomorrow is going to be better, and I have always had that from the time I was a kid. Passion. If I like something, I give it all that I got, 150%. Give it all that I have. And work ethic is that I work harder than anybody. Usually get up, even now, at 5:30 in the morning, and then I always make my bed, and I'm always in the hurry because I always think I'm late. And I still do that now at nearly, I'm going to be 84 this fall. So that's kind of what I do. And in the meantime, the started with nothing, started as a cleaner man, lumber pilot, did all that kind of stuff. I still remember sending a telex then, or that's communications in 65 was different than it is today. Obviously, you send this telegram and say,
Yeah.
I arrived, I'm doing well. I found a job. I make $2 an hour, and I was all happy about that because it took me a while before I found a job, and that kind of stuff. And now, obviously, quite a number of years later, I do have my lumber company. I have a number of other companies, but it's not about that really. And then I'm also an author. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm obviously a public speaker, in demand public speaker, and then I love podcasting and doing all that kind of stuff.
What a life, honestly.
That is insane, to be honest. Yeah, that's, like, what you're doing at your age like, you have more energy than most people our age. It's very inspiring, and it's and it's wonderful to hear about, like, how full your life feels. I can feel the energy of coming through the screen. It just seems like, wow.
The other thing that I'm doing is the last book that I wrote is now done. It's just at the editors now. Will be printed in July.
What is it?
I'm going to show you a picture
Mhm.
of the front cover.
Oh, wow.
Living
Look at that.
young,
That's you. Wow.
dying. That is me.
Look at those
Living
muscles.
young, dying old. And the purpose of the book is it's not about age. Age is a number. It's quality of life that is the critical part.
Oh, wow.
100%. John, I wanted to ask, you said you arrived in Canada with three
Yeah.
books. Could you tell us what were the three books and what kind of impact they had on
I
you?
love that question because that is so important, is that because it lays out who I really am. I must tell you one thing before
Mm.
I do, though, is that academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said to my parents, they were beautiful people, but they said, well, maybe send them to the mentally challenged school. But they didn't want to do that. So
Oh my God.
they said, maybe we have to get him a job, a career as a worker. And so obviously I liked lumber, and so they sent me to a furniture factory at 13, and so that's.
Okay.
But kids are hard on each other, and so all the friends that I had when I was 13 and in grade 7, all of those went on to college, university, and I became a laborer. Now I'm proud of that today, but then obviously it was a bit of a challenge. And I kind of felt always that I had somewhat failed, although I was still very optimistic. That brings me back to your books. That the other thing that I did, amazingly, I was always interested in people that were successful. I would travel all over the place, even in Holland. If I heard there was a successful individual in business in particular that was a speaker someplace, I would go there, listen to them. What made them click was always amazing to me. And so
Mm.
the three books, coming back to your initial question, is that the Management by Drucker was one of them in Dutch. And then the other one was Logical Thinking in Dutch. And the other book was about Canada. So those were the three books. But it formed the foundation of who I am. I always was intrigued, put it mildly, but about people that were successful. What made them click? Why were so many of them had so many similarities in a way? And then the other question was that starting with 2547, with the dream, I wanted to start. I always felt that I had to start over again in a way. So I had my dream of going to
Mhm.
Canada, the land of my heroes. And then I felt deep down that somehow I had failed, but I knew I was just as good as everybody else. I just couldn't quite figure it out. What kind of slowed me down, or what didn't make me very successful academically. And so I felt I had to start all over again, start from the bottom up. And then I knew already then, and I was only 23 years old, I would succeed. I would get my own sawmill and lumber mill. And then from there and then, I would be just as successful as all the other people that had gone the academic way.
Wow. Nothing can stop you.
No,
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I mean,
everything is possible.
everything's possible. How do you have that attitude coming from war when you were a kid? You know, me and Said were from Beirut, and we know a lot of people who are considering themselves victims of war, victims of circumstances. Life isn't fair. Other people have more opportunities than me, and so they just give up, kind of. But for you, it's the opposite. Even though you've been through struggle, you've been through true war, and yet you're able to have a positive attitude, and that even though what my experience of the world is a bit darker, but there's still light out there, it's incredible.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. Is because that is very fair. Seeing far too much that we shouldn't have seen. The danger
Mhm.
was there. There was no question about it that I'm still affected by PTSD even today. There's no question about that. It's still very much part of my life, but not so much in part of poor me, but just the opposite. I'm very vocal about it. In the community with young people in particular do have no illusions about wars, that a lot of people respectfully maybe think that a war is a war, and then when the war is over everything goes back to normal. Not so. It will change people forever and probably for generations to come. The choices that we have, we can go either say poor me or say the other one. Maybe it creates opportunities and lays a foundation that will be helpful as you go forward. And then I bless myself very much, and I fly around northern North America a lot because my lumber company is doing a lot of business in the United States as well as in Canada. So I fly around a lot commercially. I'm also a pilot actually, but commercially. And if I do commercially, I always sit by
Oh
the
my god.
window and I always look outside and I say, "It's paradise." It is paradise. We
Mm-hmm.
are so lucky to live here. And then, especially if you look at other places like Europe, with the Ukraine, Russia, obviously, and we look at the Middle East and all the other problems around the world, and that is only a few of them, how lucky we are. And the other part about our governments, both in Canada and the United States, we are democratic ruled, where the other places have dictatorships. Like, if anybody has any illusions that the democratic rule, although it's not perfect, but it's better than the opposite, especially if you look at places like Russia, North Korea, China, the Venezuela, Cuba, go on and on and on, dictatorships. You don't, you not you, but in a general sense, you wouldn't
Right.
want to exchange it for what we have. Although
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I
Yeah.
wonder what people think about it. So, but we're so fortunate.
Wow. Life is
There's
so
a lot of
bright.
positivity there,
Yeah.
definitely. So, and John, like, how did you bring upon yourself this positive mentality, and like, how do you keep it going? What do you do? What do you tell yourself to keep those positive thoughts in your head and never, and like just completely remove yourself from being in a negative mindset?
Yeah, amazingly, that not to me, because that's always the way I've been. Even when things didn't go so well in school and all the other things, I kind of lived in a world of my own, and I dreamed about things that I could do. And although I was not very good at what they were doing, but I lived in a world of my own. And even at a very young age, I was entrepreneurial. I would collect bottles and sell them. I delivered this and that. I always made dollars even when I was a little kid, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old. And And obviously, I started working physically in the furniture factory and became a furniture maker even at the age of 13. And but I always was good at what I was doing, and I always kind of looked at what made them click. And I knew, that there were opportunities, but I felt for me to prove to me, not to anybody else, but prove to me that I was just as smart as all the other people that were had gone to college and to the university. Not to prove it to them, but prove it to me. So that's why it was very important for me to
Hmm.
start from nothing when I was in Canada. But I've always been an optimist, and even now, still, most of the people around me will know that I usually always look at the positive side, and and if people like this morning, I went down and got my coffee at Starbucks, not advertising for them, but everybody knows me there, and they say, "Hey, John, how are you doing?" I said, "Well, good." And how's today? I said, "Every day is a good day." Every day is a
Hmm.
good day. And so they all kind of know me. I'm virtually a perpetual optimist. And if you have issues or problems, we solve them hopefully in a thoughtful way. And then bless ourselves for being so lucky to live in this beautiful country and in this beautiful continent, North America.
Wow, what a blessing.
That's amazing.
Said, I'm
Yeah, it's very
gonna give a
problem
spin.
solving, I would say.
Yes, Said.
And yeah, Ali, you should go for a spin. Go for it, man.
Let's go for a
So,
spin.
John, just to let you know, what we have is we have this circle that we've created.
Okay.
It has different labels which will lead to different questions, and which one you land, you will get a specific question.
Okay. I like it.
Now, also, quick message while it's spinning. For all the people who are watching, if you're not subscribed, then there's an issue here. We need you to subscribe so that you can learn more from people like John. So push that subscribe button and join us on our adventure.
All right, so you
So,
got
Ali,
the
what did we
frog.
get?
We're gonna ask about your career. A question about your career, John. I want to know what's it like for you to build a career, travel around the world, move to Canada, while also you claim you have ADHD and you've written a book about ADHD. So how difficult is it to build a career and focus on one thing when you're focused in many different aspects?
Yeah. So interesting question. Remember also that, as I said, that my dad worked already in the forest industry, and before he was lost in Rotterdam, but he did come back after the war ended. But life was never the same for him or the family at the effect of PTSD. But he still found a career in the lumber side, and my grandfather was a master carpenter. So for me, I loved lumber and anything to do with lumber. And I always knew that would be the direction of where do I go in terms of developing a career. Now, I was 13 when I started, when I finished for the third time grade seven. And so, and most of the, and it served me well because I became the practical knowledge of working with my hands gave me an amazing foundation, which still serves me well even now. I'm very good at operating and operational because I spend the 70 years of my life in the lumber industry, always looking at what can we make work better, how do you change the industry, how you become innovative. So to me, there was no question about it that's what I would do. And so that was the advantage that I had. So the more you can focus, and you meaning in a general way, I speak about
Mm-hmm.
it a lot. And I wrote a book actually about it, and that is this one, uh, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And I in particular write that because I find so many people, like I heard something in North America here on CNN or one of those other radio shows, I forget now which one, but they said that 75% of the people that are working do not like their job, and 70% of the 75% are looking actively for another career, another direction of a job. Amazing. And then the other part
Yeah.
is I do a lot of presenting to schools, younger people, and I have always, as part of my presentation, is So what are you looking for in terms of a career direction? And a lot of times you say, I don't know. I said, well, that becomes very, very critical and important as you go older, because you don't want to end up not liking what you do and then feeling you're committed because you got a mortgage, you got this, that, and so you cannot experiment and going in other directions. So, so that becomes very, very important. And then if you really don't like what you're doing, change, because you take that with you home and around the area that you interacting with other people. They can tell that you really don't like what you're doing, and that's not very healthy, not physically very healthy, mentally very healthy, and certainly not very healthy in terms of interaction in the circles that you are involved in. And so the point that I make with younger people in particular, if you think about being a truck driver, talk to truck drivers. If you're thinking about becoming a contractor, a building contractor, for instance, talk to people that are building contractors. If you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an entrepreneur for that matter, a lot of those individuals would not mind you asking them about their careers, what do they like about it, where are the challenges, and to help you get a direction. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And then the fair question, obviously, is, hey, John, are you living the dream? Well, it's already obvious, right? I am. So that's how I found a career. But it's the step further is building your own operations. Now, it is not easy to build something from the ground up. And the forest industry in British Columbia, in particular, and in Canada, is pretty much all committed in terms of access to fiber. So I had to invent a new company. I could not have done that, making a new product. I could not have done that if I had, not had the physical involvement of being trained like a furniture maker, even at the age of 13 and doing grade 7 3 times. Some people say to me, how do you feel about, having failed grade 7 3 times? Does it bother you? I said, it really does, honestly. It still bothers me today. I should have left earlier. Tongue in cheek. The point that I'm making is the formal type of education doesn't suit everybody, but it took me until I was 57 years old until I walked into a store here in Prince George, actually. All along, I already had been successful. And everybody said to me, oh, you got these companies. I already started to be quite successful. And you're so successful. I didn't feel that way. I felt I still had failed. And to a certain extent, not to the extent it kept me awake on nights, but I still felt that feeling is what's wrong with me. And so, so then when I walked into the store and I picked up a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell. And I don't know why I picked it up. And I opened the book, and it was all about ADHD. And I said to myself, oh my God, that's me. And I
Wow.
took the book and I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, because it kind of implied indirectly that it was a mental disorder of some sort. And the more I found out about it, is the more I started to realize that it was much, much different and much more than that. And in fact, after I studied it on Google and other information, I came to believe that it is a superpower.
Wow.
And I still believe that today. And then I started speaking about it more. And then I felt I had to write a book about it. And I did that. ADHD Unlocked.
All
And,
right.
and very popular, actually. And the other part that you may find interesting is that Dr. Halliwell, very well known, has written 18 books, 5 on distraction issues, is ADHD. I had him. I've done. I think you're probably. I think I've done about 240, 250 podcasts, and I think on podcast number On the Brink 203 is an interview with Dr. Halliwell. Can you believe it? He wrote a book in 2003 I bought it in 2007. I still had it with me. And as him and me interacted, I said to him that I believe that, the frequency of occurrence, although initially it was thought to be about 8%, I was already convinced then that it was probably 20% or more. Dr. Halliwell, when I mentioned that to him, he said, no, John, it's more than 25%. The other part that I found interesting about it, I said to Dr. Halliwell, is that I believe of the successful, and the operative is successful, entrepreneurs and CEOs, it is probably more than 50% ADHD. He said, no, John,
Wow.
more than 75%. I
Oh my
agree with.
God.
Oh wow,
Okay.
that's a very large number.
And people treat it
Um,
like a
I
disease or something, right? That needs to
Say
be
again?
cured.
yeah.
People treat it like a disease that needs to be cured,
No,
and
no, no,
people
no.
give it
It's
meds and such.
It
But
is
yeah.
an asset. In fact,
Hmm.
for one of my companies, I needed one of the senior management positions. So we advertised it across Canada. And in the advertisement, laid out what we required from the individual for that particular job. And then we added to it ADHD considered to be an asset.
If only all those jobs had those requirements.
I find it over and
But
over again
it's
that even now, still, although the stigma somewhat is going, and I'm very vocal about it. But I do presentation. I did a presentation with about 40 people, and they wanted me to talk about the lumber industry together with two other guys, and I was the final speaker. And the other guys talked about the lumber industry. I said, when I'm by my turn, I said, I'm not going to talk. The other guys already talked about the lumber industry, and I talk about that all the time. I want to talk about ADHD and writing books. And so then when I was finished my presentation, at least three guys stuck up their finger and say, I've never told anybody this, but I believe or I know I'm ADHD. And it sometimes happens
that's
now when
so
I
cool.
do presentations. By the time I'm finished, not all about ADHD, it's about all kinds of other issues, entrepreneurship, and health and fitness and all the other kind of things, and opportunity. And also then ADHD
Mm.
comes in the picture. By the time I'm done speaking about it, I have people sitting in the room and that say, damn, I wish I had it too.
No, that's so cool. That's so cool to hear, and like especially how you describe it as a superpower.
No question.
This is not the first time I hear someone who has ADHD describe it that way. I personally just want to understand what about it makes it a superpower. Like what makes what makes it what makes you feel that you are superhuman when you have ADHD?
Very fair question. And the other one they ask me, and the two are connected. And they say, how do you do all the things that you're doing? There you're 83, nearly 84. You're one of the oldest bodybuilders in North America, active bodybuilders and competitive bodybuilders in North America. You write books. You manage 10 different companies, and you're podcasting. You do all this stuff. How do you do it all? I say it's ADHD. That's how I do it. I couldn't do it unless I was ADHD.
So in managing your business, are you like are you doing multiple things at the same time because you're ADHD, you're following multiple interests, or are you
Yeah,
100%
exactly.
focusing on one interest at a time?
I probably focus at 20 interests all at the same time. But once I focus on something that has to get involved, I'm very good at dealing with crisis and things that I really attract me or have my interest. I'm very, very good at that.
Okay. So basically, in times of crisis, everything just shifts to the priority focus.
Or
While there's no
opportunity. Or
crisis
or
or
opportunity.
opportunity. Yeah.
So
Okay.
you mentioned on the intro that I took the whole forest industry in North America to court about fraudulent grading rules and innovative grading, multi-billion-dollar fraud. I had never
Yeah.
been in a courtroom in my life, not even sit there and watch it. I had no idea. They already
Mm.
broke me, and it's all part of my book, Against All Odds. The first book that all about odds is not about how successful John is, but going through all the ups and downs, falling down, getting back up, never give up, all the underlying critical things. So, but with
Yeah.
the lawsuit, is that once I started, they wanted to put me out of business. I'm not saying that they did necessarily, but somebody did. I had 5 arsons in 2 months,
Jeez.
coincident,
Oh wow.
obviously, including my
Yeah.
house. And it was a multi-billion. But I changed the forest industry in North America. I had only one lawyer, and I had to sit with the lawyer because I couldn't find another one. I had nothing left. And on the other side were probably 16 lawyers, some that were party to it or could potentially be party, and two or three of the best lawyers that were defending the ones that. But I won the lawsuit and I changed the North America forest industry in terms of grading rules. So the point that I'm making is that how did I do it? Is that I have an uncanny ability of I have a very good memory, and I'm very good
Yeah.
with numbers. But somehow, sitting in a school for 4 years and listening to 90% of the things that I find interesting, but I live in a different world. And most of the time,
Mm.
when I was sitting in school and you asked me afterwards, what did he talk about? I said, I have no clue. I've got to, because I was in a totally different world. And so that's why, even in this book, what I'm saying, the schooling system, although I'm supportive of it, but it's
Hmm.
not effective. So, and I address the issue of what do we do? How do we change it? When I did the book, you can open up anywhere, go forward or backward. It's always interesting. How can we change it? This kind of shows the benefits and the liabilities of it to a certain extent, and the challenges is how do we change it? And the schooling system in particular. And so by coincidence, I bumped into somebody, and we started to talk about. And he asked me. He said, I saw you wrote a book about your experience in the business and all the other things." And I told him I'm writing a book on ADHD, and he was a VP of one of the most prominent universities here in British Columbia. And he said, "Yeah, we're looking at micro certification." And I said, bingo, because there's something in this book. I'm talking about all the things that are benefits and all the other things. But the question is, even in my mind, after I finished the book, it didn't deal with the issue. Where do we go from here? What do we change? How do we make it better? And especially recognize people that are slow learners for whatever reason, not only ADHD, or not very good in terms of attention issues, or other people that are affected by trauma, that are slow learners. And saying
Mm.
micro
Yeah.
certification is that the whole concept of that, and I addresses it in the book, is where you say, I want a skill set. This is the skill set. But if you pack it with another 3 years of all kinds of other things that are secondary, of maybe interest or not at all, focus on micro certification and then expand it from there as you need it. But the shortage right now in North America, same in the States, same in Canada, and other places, is that we cannot find people that are good in the certain category of skill sets. They don't need to know all this other stuff and spend 4 or 5 years in schools and studying it, because by the time they get out, they know a lot of stuff that is not of use to them all that much necessarily, and they could make the process much smaller, but focus on the skill sets that you require for the direction that you want to go in. And that is the approach to studying in terms of micro certification.
Mm. That's very interesting. Um, John, I wanted to ask something that I noticed that people with ADHD also tend to have this inherent feeling with their like very strong connection with their um their natural instincts. Like they just have these instincts that kind of like direct them to the thing that will benefit them, or like it just works out for them if they follow their instincts. I always hear people with ADHD these things like they have followed their instincts and it ends up working out for them. What what how has that helped you? What can you tell us about it?
What I like about the question is that indeed that is the case, that but again, for me, to finish formal education, if you wish, my education continued in the way I was doing it
Mm,
at 13 years old in grade seven. Uh, you know, so I had to teach myself the way to and all the skill sets that I required. And so a lot of times people in CEO positions that have, and I'm not being negative here, I'm simply saying that they get a lot of things taught to them in universities, but the skill sets fits in a certain box, and they usually feel uncomfortable if you go outside of that. And as an entrepreneur looking for opportunities, I'm always looking around in areas that are outside of that box as in terms of opportunities that may exist.
mm,
And I'm very good at that. And simply because that's what I taught myself in terms of opportunity. The other thing that I have that makes me different is that I'm very good looking forward strategically. Where are we going in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years in terms of an industry, in terms of our company? And so, so that has served me well as well. So, so it makes me, I'm very good, have a very strong memory. I'm very good with numbers, and I'm a good strategic thinker looking forward,
mm. It's
all because of ADHD.
I'm curious about the that 5 year plan because I'm personally, for example, I'm a big history fan. Like I really like learning about history, especially when I was in school. And one thing that stuck out for me when I was learning about World War II was when Stalin took over Russia, he implemented 5 year plans, 3 5 year plans to bring Russia back to being a world power. Now, obviously, there was a lot of losses and like a lot of Russians died in these 5 year plans. But the outcome was that Russia was able to become a superpower. And it's interesting that you mentioned the 5 year plan because I see a lot of consistency with that in a lot of strategic planners. And like, I wonder why is it that 5 years is the number? Like, what about the five? The number five is so like it sticks out.
Yeah, it's a good question. The I've always kind of looked at it that way. The near term is that we budget for next year. Now already we're working on 2024 in terms of what are we going to do in our companies, what will it look
Mm,
like. I'm already planning on 25 in terms of developing plans, in terms of concepts, do we want to pursue, what does it look like? What do we require in terms of infrastructure? And start working towards that in terms of making sure at least reasonable expectations of market conditions. And then that's the probably 2 years, 3 years, nearly 5 years period. So it fits in that 5 years as being the point where we then go to the next five, if you
mm,
wish, in terms of okay, when we go there, what should be the next step forward?
yeah,
In our companies, in our strategy. What will the economy look like? And what other things are happening that are beyond our control?
yeah,
So at least build expectation. So and then it's two sets of directions, I guess. The silos that I have in particular that I focus on in my companies is the one is silo is lumber, the other silo is warehousing, distribution, and
yeah,
logistics. And the other one is real estate, primarily commercial and industrial. So those are the three silos. And then each silo can well be different, not so much in the next 2, 3, four
yeah, yeah.
years, but in the following 5 years as to where do we go from there. So that's kind of how it in my mind and my management, how I kind of manage it looking forward.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment before we spin the wheel, Ali, if that's okay. Um, I
Let's
feel
do it.
like the 5 year plan as well is not only for businesses. I feel like it's also implemented on personal development for individuals. I feel like if there's no drastic change happening in your life after every 5 years, then you're probably not doing anything to progress and you're just stagnating. Like every 5 years, it's even
Yeah,
3 years, I would say, but 5 years is definitely the benchmark. If nothing is changing in your life,
yeah,
then
yeah.
you gotta do something about it.
Yeah, once you're in my case, where you're nearly 84, and you're saying when I'm 89, then other things may happen. A lot of people would say you're probably not around anymore. Then I intend to be. I want to get to 120. So the 5 year plan becomes tongue in cheek a little bit to others who say, yeah, right. But on the other hand, the people that know me, so I'm very after this, I'm going to be hurrying off to the gym and stay fit, make sure my diet and all those kind of things. So my primary plan is to be alive first and foremost when I'm the next five
Hopefully,
years.
you
And then the
stick to
second
it.
one
Yeah.
is so just a little bit tongue in cheek.
All right, Ali, shall we spin the wheel? Let's see what we get.
Let's do it one more time. All right. Okay. Back at the front. And we got a deer. Let's do it. Self care. So let's talk about self care. What do you do to? I know you're so busy and you have so many things you do in your life. What do you do to make sure you're stress free, that things aren't overwhelming you, that you're taking care of yourself mentally and physically, emotionally, spiritually? Tell us about your self care routine.
So I'm an optimist. The and again, not overplaying ADHD, but I have the ADHD allows me to focus on a couple of things in particular, and the other ones I just set aside, and they are not. I'm not buried in those kind of things because I'm not dealing with those issues at a particular time. I make sure that I stay physically fit. So going to the gym and being physically fit is important to me. And obviously, I've taken that one step further because I'm a competitive bodybuilder and I intend to be at the Arnold's in 2025.
All right.
And so yeah, so I was here, came in second, third provincially. That put me second, third, and that got me into the nationals and qualified me for the Arnold's. Then COVID came. Now again, I'm training for the Arnold's in 2025. So that's what I'm kind of doing, saying physically. At the same time, diet to me is very important. It's all part of my book, Living Young, Dying Old, that's coming out in July, actually. And I'm mainly on a plant based diet. If I go to grocery stores, my wife is a vegetarian. That helps. And if I go to a grocery store, I usually stay around the outside to the healthy stuff and mainly organic, plant-based diet. And I don't go in the middle aisles where most of the food is processed food. And if I don't know what is in it, I don't want it. And that does not mean to say all processed food is bad, but the tendency is of staying out of the middle for me works and having a plant-based diet. I don't smoke, I don't drink, and so I'm trying to stay healthy. At the same time, what I do is I work during the week. I'm in Central British Columbia. We have also a place in Victoria. Friday afternoons, I usually go to Victoria. We have a beautiful house there. We have horses. We have 7 horses. Both my wife, myself, we ride English dressage, and then when I'm there, I relax more. I focus. I'm working on 2 other books that I'm writing, and that will come out in 2024 and 25. And so it gives me a change, and then at the same time, wherever the opportunity presents itself, I'm still doing keynote presentations. And then obviously the other relaxation for me is podcasting. And podcasting in particular, I find amazing what it has done. Like for me as a speaker and a keynote speaker, being in demand, a lot of times it takes me a long time to get to the location, and and not trying to be important, but I don't have as much time available. And then gradually in podcasting, initially we started on a local regional basis, then gradually as it unfolded and still on its infancy in my mind, and we are a good example of what we are doing here, is that
Right.
we virtually podcasting from London, from Los Angeles and Prince George, Central British Columbia. We having this amazing discussion, and what we know already between us, that tens of thousands of people will be watching us. And that's not trying to be important, but I know they are, and it's an amazing vehicle. I love to do that, and I really enjoy it. So again, coming to your, what do you do physically, mentally? The physically, I enjoy life. I enjoy every day when I get up. I say how fortunate we are, right? That we live where we live, and uh, every day is a good day for me. And if it isn't, I'll make it one. And if people say to me, no, it isn't, I avoid them. So, and then the other parts, obviously I'm troubled by some of the things that are going on substantially, because I know the results of it. War around the world really troubles me, not because of only the issues involved, but also because the damage it will do to those, in particular, young people and other people that, life will never be the same again for them, and maybe not for generations. Like, give you an example again,
Hmm.
PTSD still is very much part of my life. Then I was affected by my mom was the only one for our kids. My dad, they didn't know where he was he dead or alive? And so I got counseling for the inner child, which is basically the little boy that never got resolved, is still inside of me. I was well into my 50s when I got counseling for it. Very emotional. But all things that, that are the result of war and and then the other things that I do, I just thought I mentioned it. Remembrance Day, November the 11th. I always make it a point in the last 10, 12 years that I always speak to 2 or 4 schools during that week and talk to them about what does it mean, Remembrance Day? Why the 2 minutes of silence? Why is it so important that they understand?
Wow. I think it's amazing that you know your childhood was a bit lost due to war. You know, but on the other hand, you have this youth in growing up. It doesn't seem like you lost it. It just seems that it got misplaced and transferred towards the rest of your life. Um, do you think hard times make people even stronger?
I have the benefit of, in a way, it was not always easy. A lot of times it was very, very challenging. My book, Against All Odds, speaks about that.
Mm-hmm.
That it gave me the foundation that made me able to be what I am today, to have been there, have gone through it, fall down, stand up, falling down again. You don't fail. You just make sure that, and that's another part that is important to me, guys, is that when I talk to people, in particular young people, I say always, people are too preoccupied. I don't look right. I don't, this is not right. That is not right. Always say, make sure, understand that you are unique as that individual. There is no one else like you in the whole world. You are special. So do not go negative and say this is wrong and that is wrong. To just be there. You can make it what you want it to be, but you have to believe in yourself. Not that you're special, not that you're better than anybody else, but you are special in terms of who you are. and you can make a difference.
Wow. Saeed, what do you think?
JohnABrink.com, and all the things that we are doing are right there. You know.
Perfect.
And again, I apologize for my technicality. We introduced
No,
some new
it's all
stuff,
good.
but we got it done. Yeah. So
Exactly.
yeah, and the other part, guys, that I want to our guests that are watching us from our side as well as yours, is that I say to them, that podcasting is a unique ability of people from around the world together. If I look at the screen, there we got London, Los Angeles, and Central British Columbia, Canada, speaking about topics that affect us all. And
Hmm.
I urge them to subscribe to our podcast. So that you will get more of it, because it's still at the beginning where the whole world gets it's the new medium bottom platform, really, that is the most, probably not already the most active, but becoming more and more the most active. And I'm a great believer in where this will go and where we are now. We are already doing that to substantial extent.